For decades, monosodium glutamate, which most of us just know as MSG, has arguably been one of the most controversial food additives on the planet. It's one of those things that has sparked really passionate, sometimes heated debates in kitchens, restaurants, and even medical communities all over the world.
I mean, think about it. For a long time, people have associated MSG with some genuinely severe symptoms. We're talking pounding headaches, facial flushing, heart palpitations, and, yeah, even claims of literal brain damage. It's a pretty terrifying list, right? But on the exact opposite side of this debate, you have scientists and nutritionists standing there saying, wait a minute, this stuff is completely safe. It's totally harmless. We're all just misunderstanding it. So that brings us to a really fascinating question. What if the science actually says otherwise? What if the reality of MSG is completely different from the terrible reputation it's had all these years? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig right past the rumors and the decades of panic to find out what the evidence actually proves. So here's our investigation roadmap. We're going to quickly cover the great MSG controversy, dive into the chemistry of umami taste, explore glutamate as the brain's messenger, explain the origins of Chinese restaurant syndrome, and finally, deliver the true verdict on MSG's safety. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The Great MSG Controversy. What exactly is MSG? When you actually strip away that scary-sounding acronym, the reality is grounded in very basic chemistry. Monosodium glutamate is literally just the sodium salt of glutamic acid. And glutamic acid, well, it's just a naturally occurring amino acid. It's one of the fundamental building blocks of proteins in our own bodies, so it's definitely not some synthetic alien chemical cooked up in a lab. And here is the crazy part about this. That quote-unquote controversial glutamic acid, it is naturally abundant in everyday foods. If you like ripe tomatoes, aged Parmesan cheese, earthy mushrooms, or savory meats, you're already consuming high amounts of natural glutamate. Seriously, it's even found in human breast milk. So before we even take our very first bite of solid food as babies, we're already naturally exposed to glutamate. Now, let's think about what happens when it's actually used in cooking. When MSG goes into moisture like a simmering pot of soup or even just hitting the saliva on your tongue, it simply dissociates. It physically breaks apart into basic sodium ions and glutamate. And here is the kicker. Your body absolutely does not distinguish between the glutamate that naturally comes from a slice of cheese and the glutamate from a pinch of MSG seasoning. To your body, it is processed exactly the same way. All right, Section 2. The chemistry of umami taste, the fifth flavor sensation. Just as a super quick refresher, we humans recognize 5 primary tastes. We've got sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. But that fifth one, umami, is that deeply savory, rich, meaty, or brothy flavor that makes food feel incredibly satisfying. And the main producer of that world-famous mouth-watering sensation? You guessed it, it's glutamate. Physically and anatomically, we call this the umami pathway. When glutamate enters your mouth, it's basically like a key sliding right into a lock. It binds to specific umami taste receptors right there on your tongue. And when those receptors activate, it acts like a massive flavor amplifier. It drastically cranks up the intensity and palatability of whatever you're eating, which, by the way, is exactly why it's added to so many processed foods, soups, and instant noodles. It just tastes incredibly good. Moving to Section 3, glutamate, the brain's messenger. Let's look at the physiology and neuroscience. Okay, so it turns out glutamate isn't just a food additive. It is actually one of the most vital neurotransmitters in your entire nervous system. It's the primary molecule responsible for excitatory neurotransmission. It plays a totally massive role in your ability to learn new things, to form long-term memories, and to send rapid signals between your neurons. Honestly, you literally could not think without it. So you might be wondering, how does the glutamate we eat interact with the glutamate that's already up in our brains? Well, our brains are protected by this incredible thing called the blood-brain barrier. Think of it as a super strict physiological VIP bouncer. This barrier severely limits dietary glutamate from entering the central nervous system, which means the glutamate you get from eating a savory snack does not freely cross over into your brain in any significant amount. Your body is really smart. It keeps the food glutamate and the brain glutamate strictly separated. Section 4, Chinese Restaurant Syndrome Explained, the origins of a medical myth. So how did everyone get so scared of this stuff in the first place? Well, back in 1968, a single letter was published in a medical journal, and it sparked an absolute worldwide panic. It detailed these reported symptoms people were allegedly having after eating Chinese food. We're talking headaches, flushing, sweating, palpitations, and numbness.
This one letter coined the highly controversial term Chinese restaurant syndrome. Now, today, the medical community uses the more appropriate term MSG symptom complex, but 1968 is exactly where all that fear started.
But what does the actual clinical data tell us today? Well, despite those early anecdotal panic reports, modern scientific studies have totally failed to reproduce those symptoms under rigorous, blinded conditions. Meaning, when researchers secretly hide MSG in food so people don't actually know they're eating it, those severe symptoms just don't reliably show up. Sure, individual mild sensitivities can exist, just like with literally any food. But the idea of a widespread severe syndrome, it just couldn't be proven.
And that brings us to those terrifying rumors about brain damage. This stems from the excitotoxicity theory. The idea is that excessive glutamate stimulation leads to increased neuronal excitation, which then theoretically injures the neurons. Now, early animal experiments did raise some eyebrows about this when researchers injected massive doses straight into the subjects. But here is the crucial reality check. While excitotoxicity is a real mechanism, the doses they used in those extreme animal studies were far, far beyond any normal human dietary exposure. It's not even a realistic comparison for what we actually eat.
Section 5. The verdict on MSG's safety. Let's look at the clinical consensus and the facts.
When we zoom out and look at the major global regulatory bodies, I'm talking about heavyweights like the World Health Organization and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Their comprehensive reviews all arrive at the exact same conclusion. They both officially consider MSG to be generally safe for most individuals when consumed in normal dietary amounts. Case closed. Oh, and get this, there is a really surprising fact about MSG's actual nutritional profile. If we do a direct side-by-side comparison between MSG and standard table salt, sodium chloride, MSG actually contains significantly less sodium for the exact same amount of flavor enhancement. So for people trying to actively manage their blood pressure, substituting a bit of regular table salt with MSG can actually reduce your overall sodium intake while somehow making your meals taste even better. It's a total win-win.
So, to sum up the clinical consensus here, normal dietary MSG intake in healthy humans has absolutely not been conclusively shown to cause neurotoxicity. And while scientists are always doing ongoing research to explore subtle links with things like obesity or metabolic syndrome, the evidence there remains really mixed and inconsistent. The overwhelming bottom line, normal, everyday intake levels are perfectly safe.
Monosodium glutamate is undeniably one of the most deeply misunderstood food additives in modern nutrition history. But as we've seen today, just a basic understanding of chemistry, the umami pathway, and the blood-brain barrier can completely dismantle decades of panic and misinformation. Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, evidence matters far more than fear. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. What misunderstood topic should we investigate next? Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in our next explainer.